Have you ever had slugs eat all of your seedlings in a single night? Losing all of that hard work is devastating, isn't it? Slug pellets aren't the answer though. Many are harmful to pets and wildlife, and even organic pellets labelled as non-toxic can harm earthworms, and we need our worms. Follow my 7 tips and you won't ever need slug pellets, because you can control slugs 100% naturally. No matter how much of a headache some slugs give us, not all slugs and snails are bad news. They help to feed birds and other wildlife higher up the food chain. Not all slugs eat live plants, and in fact, we can think of these munching mollusks more like nature's recyclers, returning dead plant material back into nutrients into the soil. Some slugs just eat moss, and others, like the leopard slug, and I think I've got one here, help to actually control other species of slug by eating them. So we need to be fairly targeted in how we control slugs. It's impossible to eradicate every slug from your garden anyhow, and as I'm about to reveal, there's plenty we can do to keep numbers to a more tolerable level and, dare I say it, even live harmoniously alongside them. And my first tip is to reduce any opportunities for slugs to lurk. That means keeping everything in and around your garden tidy by removing things like stray pots and trays, picking off and composting any dead or yellowed leaves, and generally removing any cool and shady spots that might offer a refuge for those slimy so-and-sos. In an ideal world, we'd want to locate our productive garden some distance away from trees and shrubs, as cool and shady spots like this are obviously ideal territory for slugs. Slugs love nothing more than fresh and tender growth, especially seedlings. Some crops are more susceptible than others, including salads, cabbage family and bean plants, and celery and carrot seedlings. If you're growing at-risk veggies, then start them off under cover or anywhere well away from the slug risk. Then you can transplant bigger, more robust plants. Carrots need to be sown where they're going to be grown on, so pick somewhere that's nice and clean and clear of any lush, overgrown shrubby foliage. Slugs and snails typically come out to play around dusk as nightfall approaches. This cooler and obviously shadier time of day is when they typically come out and feed and gorge. All the better if it's nice and moist and damp. So if you've got to water, try to do it in the morning if you can, to give foliage plenty of time to dry out well before nightfall. With our slimy nemesis out on the very slow but steady prowl from dusk, this is also the best time to go on a slug hunt. Head out into the garden with a light so you can find them and pick off any you come across. Go on regular slug hunts to keep the populations in check. If you haven't got the time or will to go on a nighttime slug hunt, then set up little traps to corral them. They'll retreat to them during the day and then you can pick them up and collect them at your leisure. So for example, a plank laid against the wall of a raised bed creates a nice shady spot, or just laying planks on the soil here so they can get in underneath when it's warm. Or for something deliciously straightforward, use large leaves like this rhubarb here. Harvest and enjoy the stem, then lay the inedible leaves in strategic locations to offer a cool bolt hole. And with my slug sanctuaries in position, all I need to do now is lift up and inspect the undersides every couple of days and remove any slugs or snails I come across. Easy. It's very reasonable to look upon slug pellets as a convenient scatter and forget solution, but my main gripe with them is that they typically contain the binding agent EDTA, even the organic ones, and EDTA has been proven to harm earthworms. We want more worms in our garden, so it makes no sense to scatter these guys to get rid of slugs, only to impact our #1 gardening ally. And if you'd like more on helping earthworms, by the way, I'll link to a video on that in the description below. Slug traps are one of my favourite alternatives to slug pellets. Typically I'll sink a pot or some sort of ramekin like this into the ground and then fill it with cheap beer. Then I'll check back every couple of days and remove any slugs that have fallen in and drowned and top up as necessary. But even cheap beer deserves to be drunk, not wasted. So this year I'm switching to a yeasty liquid that costs a fraction of the price of beer, but does an even better job. In fact, researchers in the US state of Oregon compared a number of slug attractants to see which would come out on top, including sluggy favourites such as cucumber, strawberries, beer and bread. And guess what? Bread came out on top. Now, bread dough will certainly attract slugs, but it won't trap them. But what we can do is make a sort of liquid bread that should do the trick. And to start, I'm adding 1 cup of flour to a bowl, and next 2 cups of water. And then a sachet of standard yeast, and then whisk it all together. This liquid is a bit thinner than, say, pancake batter, but we want it nice and liquid so the slugs fall in and drown. Then I need this lidded container, and I'm just going to cut 2 little notches into the sides for the slugs to climb into. Right then, let's go set this all up. So I buried my trap at the edge of the garden here, quite close to this kind of wet, boggy area behind me to kind of intercept the slugs as they come to and fro. I buried it so the kind of lip of the notch here is slightly above ground level. That'll avoid beneficial bugs like ground beetles accidentally climbing and falling in. Just the slugs should get in there. So it's in the ground, and then it's in with the yeasty liquid to cover most of the bottom there. And then I'm just going to pop the lid on, which will keep the rain out. Now what I'm going to do is check this every few days, but really the main slug interest should happen after about 3 days when the liquid goes a little bit sour. They absolutely love that. And what I'll do is I'll just fish out any slugs, and then after maybe 10 days or so, just top up with more of the yeasty liquid or fresh stuff. This is great throughout the growing season, but I'll do this especially intently at the end of it, kind of early autumn, as the slugs start to kind of hibernate for the winter and go underground. It'll make a real dent on populations before the winter and ensnare any of them before they get a chance to lay their eggs that will hatch out in spring. Slugs and snails are soft-bodied, so anything really sharp and spiky that we can lay around plants that may be damaged is well worth a try. Now, brambles and other spiky stems like this are perfect. The slugs really won't like crossing this, so we can lay them in a nice thick band around our specimen plant we're trying to protect, but do lay them quite thick and tight so the slugs can't kind of weave their way through. Sheep's wool is often recommended as a barrier because it's got lots of little tiny fibres that kind of irritate the slug. Now, if you don't know a sheep farmer, most people wouldn't, then you can buy these little wool pellets. Just spread them around your plants like these. Now, once this is wetted, what it'll do is expand and form like a felt-like mat. And that will not only be irritating for the slug, it'll kind of dry out the slug and suck out the moisture, and it really won't want that. So it'll just tend to give up and go away. Another barrier often recommended is crushed eggshells, but this falls down for 2 reasons. A, you need to eat a lot of eggs to get a meaningful amount of shells, and B, they just don't really work. They're not very sharp, and slugs aren't put off by them. One crop that never gets any bother from the slugs is my garlic. And that's because slugs can't stand the stuff, and we can use that to our advantage. Garlic spray is a potent preventative option that we have in our toolkit to use around especially at-risk plants. Just take 2 bulbs of garlic and crush it all up and add it to a pan. Then add 2 pints or just over a litre of water, and we're going to take this inside to boil and simmer for about 15 minutes. Well, we've had this simmering for 15 minutes, so we're all good. And it doesn't half whiff, so if you don't want to stink out your entire house, maybe bubble this up outside in the fresh air. Now, this stuff goes a long way. I'm going to decant this into a bottle with a lid to store, but in the meantime, let's get on and use some. 1 tablespoon is enough for half a gallon of water. So for this sort of size, just sort of half a teaspoon or tablespoon even like that, and then dilute it with our water. So spray your slug-prone plants with this garlic spray about once every 10 days, and again if it rains. And then you can just ease off once plants are a bit bigger and can withstand the occasional nibbling. Slugs are a favourite snack for all sorts of garden wildlife, from birds to frogs and toads to ground beetles. So do all you can to promote a healthy, happy garden ecosystem. Include shrubs to offer shelter and a vantage point for birds. Finding empty snail shells like this is a really good sign because it means the birds have been busy getting their snacks. A pond of any size can help to attract amphibians. And include a log pile, or as I have in my garden, wood chip paths, which are both great for ground beetles. Having these natural predators on site is well worth it. Ducks have a voracious appetite for slugs, and in the words of late permaculture pioneer Bill Mollison, you don't have a slug problem, you've got a duck deficiency. So if you live in the countryside or have a bigger garden, then ducks may be something you want to consider. I rather like the idea of turning slugs into eggs and free fertiliser in the form of droppings. It's great when we can grow our food without involving nasty chemicals. Thank you for working with nature, and as a thank you for watching to the end of the video, pick yourself up a free abridged copy of my book. It's still over 100 pages long and loaded with ideas and inspiration to help you get the most from your garden this growing season. Just follow the link or scan the QR code over here to download your copy. I'll catch you next time.